This wasn't easy. Not in the obvious ways. Not in the dramatic ways people notice. It was hard in the quiet parts. In the ordinary days that ask more of you than you had planned to give. It was hard in the moments when you had to keep going without feeling supported. Hard in the decisions that didn't feel heroic, just necessary. You didn't wake up one morning ready for this kind of weight. You grew into it because you had no other choice. And even now, you might struggle to explain why this season drained you so deeply. Nothing big happened. Life just kept asking and asking. This wasn't easy, and God knows that. You carried responsibilities that didn't pause. When you were tired, He showed up on days when rest would have felt wiser. But absence would have caused more damage. You stayed engaged when stepping back would have been easier to justify. That kind of endurance doesn't announce itself. It hides in consistency, in choosing to remain steady when emotions are unstable, in keeping your word when no one would have blamed you for letting it slide. That effort didn't come from strength alone. It came from conviction. From knowing that leaving would cost something deeper than staying ever did. And Scripture understands this kind of endurance very well. In Psalm 73-26, the psalmist writes, "My flesh and my heart may fail, but God is the strength of my heart, and my portion forever." This psalm was written from a place of inner struggle. The psalmist was tired, conflicted, emotionally stretched. When he says his flesh and heart may fail, he isn't confessing defeat. He's naming exhaustion. And the promise that follows doesn't deny that exhaustion exists. It answers it. God does not shame the weary heart. He strengthens it, not by removing every burden, but by supplying what you no longer have. That's how you survived. What wasn't easy? You didn't suddenly feel energized. You were sustained. Enough patience for one more conversation. Enough clarity for one more decision. Enough composure to finish another day. And that steady supply changed how you carry yourself now. You're more measured, less reactive. Not because you care less, but because you learned what caring costs. This wasn't easy. It required restraint. There were moments when saying everything you felt would it have been satisfying, but you didn't. You learned how to pause internally so you could continue externally. That kind of discipline is not natural. It is formed under pressure. Psalm 55-22 speaks directly to this kind of season. Cast your burden on the Lord, and He will sustain you. David wrote this while carrying leadership pressure, betrayal, and constant emotional strain. When David talks about casting his burden, he isn't talking about abandoning responsibility. He is talking about transferring the weight of outcome. The responsibility remained, but the crushing pressure did not have to stay on his shoulders. That is the promise, not escape. Sustenance. And that sustenance is what kept you upright when others would have collapsed. You may not feel strong, but you're stable. And stability matters. This season didn't teach you how to push harder. It taught you how to last, how to pace yourself, how to conserve energy, how to stay present without absorbing every demand around you. That skill alone will protect you in future seasons. Psalm 121:3 says, "He will not let your foot slip. He who watches over you will not slumber." This verse doesn't promise a smooth path. It promises steadiness. The road you walked was uneven, the load heavier than you expected. But you didn't lose your footing. You adjusted your pace. You learned when to slow down. Instead of pushing through recklessly, that wasn't weakness. That was wisdom. You learned that endurance is not about intensity. It's about sustainability, about remaining aligned, even when pressure remains. This wasn't easy. It tested your emotional regulation, your patience, your self-control. There were days when your inner world felt crowded, thoughts overlapping, responsibilities stacking, and still, you chose composure. You chose to respond instead of react. That choice protected your integrity. Proverbs 4:23 says, "Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it." You guarded your heart, not by shutting down, but by becoming grounded. He didn't let disappointment turn into bitterness. He didn't let fatigue turn into recklessness. You learned how to stay firm without becoming rigid. That balance doesn't come easily. It comes from living through what isn't easy. This season also changed how you see people. You became more discerning. You noticed who could carry weight with you and who stepped back when things became inconvenient. That clarity wasn't painful by accident. It was necessary. Psalm 66:10 says, "For you, O God, have tested us. You have refined us like silver." Refining does not destroy. What matters? It removes what cannot last. Silver survives the heat. It becomes clearer because of it. You're clearer now. Clearer about your limits. clearer about your priorities, clearer about what you can and cannot carry. That clarity came at a cost, but it was not wasted. Isaiah 40:31 says, "Those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength." Waiting here does not mean doing nothing. It means restraint. It means continuing forward. Without clarity, without guarantees, you did that. You waited while working. You waited while showing up. And strength was renewed quietly, not as excitement, as steadiness. Enough to remain faithful, enough to stay aligned. This wasn't easy, but it reshaped you. You no longer rush just to escape discomfort. You no longer overextend to prove your value. You move with intention now, with awareness. That shift will matter because future seasons will require people who can carry weight without losing themselves. Jesus spoke directly to people carrying this kind of burden. In Matthew 11:28, he said, "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." Jesus does not call those who avoided responsibility. He calls those who labored. Rest here is not abandonment. It is restoration within responsibility. Jesus understands the cost of endurance. He does not minimize what you carried. This wasn't easy, and God knows that. He saw the restraint. No one applauded. The faithfulness. No one noticed. The discipline that kept things from falling apart. Nothing was overlooked. Nothing was wasted. You didn't imagine how hard this was. You didn't exaggerate the cost. You endured, and you were sustained. If this message spoke to you, like the video, share it with someone who carried more than they ever said out loud. Subscribe for more devotionals that speak to real life and real faith. And if you feel led, leave a comment saying, "God knows the cost." May His peace find you today.